everything he did.
Yeah, well, like I said, we got pictures of him with Seymour and Sheldon.
Yeah.
And both, he's sitting there looking happy as a clam with a big grin on his face.
Yeah.
He's got push spoons in the lapel
Yeah.
and the big designs, and the two
Yeah.
sons are sitting there kind of like, they don't even mind.
Yeah, right.
It's his baby and he wants it.
Yeah, see, even the smallest thing, he put as much effort as he would to the biggest thing, you know? I mean, everything he did was full blast, you know, really. He didn't, like you can say, the other guys were probably more thinking about the money and the big engineering deal with Henry Ford and stuff like that, you know, and he was, no matter what he did, he put a full blast to it, and that was it.
Yeah, but if fishing or mechanics wasn't your bag,
Right.
he wasn't altogether the friendliest guy in the world.
Oh no, he had no use for people that were idle and didn't and wasted time. I mean, to him, life was so damn short. There wasn't enough room in it to get all the things done. And I mean, if you just couldn't talk somewhat intelligent about, you know, whatever the field was, well, hell, he didn't have any room for you. And you know, or weren't interested in it. I mean, you had to have the interest in it. And then he'd go along. He'd tolerate people and try and learn them a little something. But he didn't put up too long if he didn't see any hope. You know, he'd move on and get something productive done. So
I guess I was lucky to make it out fishing with him 3 or 4 times.
is that right? Well, you were a relative, and
Yeah,
you had a. He probably wanted to try and train you a little.
Tell you those, as many hours as I put in sitting with my father on Twin Lakes.
Yeah.
Never caught anything. Caught a few
Yeah.
times I went with Grandpa.
Right.
Reeled him in.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, see, that's he was efficient in a way. Like if he was going to go fishing somewhere, he'd go where the fish were. I mean, he wasn't going to waste his time. He would go to the best possible chances. Then he'd use the best possible means and everything. Say.
Yeah, but how do you know?
Yeah, how do you figure
That's what
that?
I can't figure out.
Well, you fished a lot of places, and pretty soon he got in there and he found it was good. Well, so he went back there. You know, he didn't bother going to some place that was mediocre. And he would just keep going back there. And if he had the opportunity to go fishing, like he wouldn't go to a lake where there was 10 million people there. If he had the opportunity to go to this private place, and
At the Holly Lake, the lake outside Holly, he put in a line with 3 or so hooks on it, and he'd be reeling in 3.
oh yeah,
That's the most amazing.
yeah. Well, it was just nobody fished the lake. You know, fish reproduce quite fast if there's food there, and nobody's taking them out. Why, it can pretty well get overstocked, really, and they'll stun everything. So that lake was probably had too many fish in it, if anything. You sure weren't going to hurt it what you could take out of it.
Yeah, we only have one picture of. It has to be. There's a car in the back that looks like maybe a 36 Ford or something. He's got a stringer. A whole bunch of fish, but the littlest fish that you ever caught, I think, it's about 6 inches.
Huh.
Yeah, perch. He's got a whole ton of them, but they're all little. And every other photo we see of Morris, he's got these huge suckers.
Well, back then he probably couldn't afford to go to these places where all them big fish were, saying, and is
He's
he?
still in his necktie, you know, in
Yeah.
a lot of these pictures.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's really weird.
Yeah, he was quite a guy, really. He's a rare individual. I mean, you can find too many like him that could do all.
Well, do you know? I mean, what got him turned on to this fishing? I mean, obviously none of these. Like when he came to this country, he was pretty much on his own. So.
Well, I don't know, just a good relaxing hobby, and it's something you can be creative with too. It isn't something like where you just use, take a lot of sports. What do? You go out and you buy everything and you use it. Well, this sport, you could be really creative in it, which was making the lures push spoon and getting into the rod making later on. And oh gosh, he made a boat. Did you ever see his aluminum boat? He made that. That was a beautiful boat he made, and I remember that.
Must have seen it.
Yeah, he had an aluminum boat, and it was just like any professional-made boat. I mean, it was all well riveted together, and I don't know what did happen to that.
I never knew he made it.
Yeah.
The one at the cabin?
I don't think it's the one that's there now, but I remember the one that he used to take.
It seemed to me it was at that Lake Holly or something.
Yeah, right. Now, I remember the boat, but
Yeah.
nobody ever mentioned to me that he built it.
Yeah, he made
Beautiful chest.
Oh yeah,
that he made.
yeah, tool chests and stuff, right? Oh, he had a lot of nice toolboxes and stuff. In fact, I got stuff over here that. See if I got one. This one thing I use it all the time. It's neat little thing here. Looks like another one here too. Little vice grip. Just got his name on that or not?
Look at that picture. Well, those are
Like
nice,
this is a
right?
little V block, you know, it's for punching things out. This is a little vise here, but it hasn't got his name on it, but he made that, he gave me that. Just a little precision vise that you would use for...
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, here's a...
I don't even know where to buy those machines out of.
There's a little V block there.
He's proud of this stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, this stuff will last forever, you know. I mean.
Yeah, that's what amazes me. Everything he did there would go well.
Yeah.
But you were the one who really got him turned on to the rod making.
Well, I wouldn't say I got him turned on. He was interested, and he was playing with that before I came into the picture. But then when he met me, I told him a lot of the theory and a lot of the principles of the, you know, like say the node stuff, you know, and things like that, or how it should be. I used to go over there a lot of times, and boy, he'd have a bunch of rods made. He'd made, you know, for the last week or two, and probably the only guy that could really tear them apart. And boy, I just tell him everything what was wrong. I said, "No, that ain't no good, you know. That ain't no good." And sometimes, you know, he really appreciated this after a while. And he said, "Well, don't tell anybody else." You know? But then, you know, he'd stop that because there were certain little items that just wasn't sort of accepted in the art, you know. And I used to tear a, well, you know, it could be an art, I guess you could call it that, you know.
We didn't really know
Yeah.
what we were getting into, but
So then, you know, I'd tear him apart sometimes for him, tell him what he was doing wrong. I said, you know, first somebody sees that, who knows, they're going to laugh at it, you know. And so he would get out of that thing.
That must have just... You were the only person.
Yeah, really. I don't think anybody else would have, because, I'd been over there more than one time when somebody would, happened a couple of times, and some guy would come in that was sort of, supposedly knew something, you know, read books or something. That's the only way he knew. He didn't build rods, but he read a book and say this thing wasn't supposed to be. And he'd pick it up and point it to his friend, you know. Well, here's Morris standing over here with his back turned or something, and he didn't know it. Well, when they left, I pointed out to him, and I says, now, this is what you can't do. Some of these guys are going to see this stuff, you know. And so we'd get that straightened out, you know. And a couple of times he said, well, boy, thanks a lot. I'm glad you know. But what the hell? Why shouldn't you? I mean, you might let somebody go along making fun of himself. And just like he showed me things, too, that were more in his field. Like I tell you, I'm polishing that gun and stuff. I was doing a lot of things the hard way. When I went over to his place there, he gave me a few little things, and we got it going right away. Then when he saw I was doing all this kind of stuff, then he'd give me things like that, you know. And those are all worth quite a few dollars, you know, if you had to go buy them and stuff like that.
Could you go and buy something? You have to get
Oh yeah, you can buy that. Oh yeah, there's catalogs. There's a lot of catalogs that you know make that kind of stuff. But he would never, you know, he would buy. What did I have here? I remember one day I was over at his shop. Like I made a lot of things like that. Now here's something I made when I was in high school. Let's see, this here is this got a lot of parts to it. This is a height gauge. See, this thing goes that way, and it's got a fine adjustment here, and it's also you can put this indicator on something. That's a thousandth of an inch each one of those marks when that moves. See? Well, like you take, well, like here's a Starrett catalog. They're probably the greatest tool makers in the world. Now let's see how they have V blocks and stuff. Like, oh, there's my height gauge.
Did you
Okay.
patent this?
No. See, there's a V block, something like that. One block I showed you, except that's got the clamps on it and everything, which go on that too. Well, see, that's it too, right there. See, he had his name stamped in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can buy those things. Now, I've had my. There. See, that's what that is. Except they got a scribe in there, so the indicator on it now. It's basically the same thing. So, you know, all those things can be bought. Now, I built that in high school. Anyway, where's the stamp in there? What was the date, 57 or 58?
1957. Oh, yeah.
See? Okay, now I made that thing in there, and I had a kind of interesting thing. I found something here the other day I made, too, that was kind of unusual. This here,
sand down.
is a this is a 5-inch sine bar. Now, you know, you had trigonometry and that kind of stuff in math, remember? Yeah, so it's really fine measurements. This 5-inch sine bar, between that center of that roll and that one right there, is exactly 25 millionths of an inch. I mean, we're getting into thousands and split that up into hundreds and then get down to the millions. So it's exactly that close. So I made that thing in high school. In the 10th grade, I remember. We entered this in the industrial arts contest all over the United States, Hawaii, and everywhere. You know, all the high schools. This took second place all over the whole United States. And I had a letter from Henry Ford and all that stuff, you know. And then I made that thing there, and that one took first place in Detroit area. J.L. Hudson's had a thing, you know. And so the school entered those things, you know. So that's how I got, you know, that tool stuff, you know. It always interests me. But I made these things in school, and hey, I didn't have any help with a teacher or nothing. You know, I just went ahead more or less off my own. Everybody in the class was making C-clamps. Well, not the damn C-clamp. So I got making these kind of things. But one time I was in Morris's shop, and a salesman come in. And, you know, they're always trying to sell them everything, and they give them samples. Like, this is a Brown Sharp depth mic. In other words, that measures how deep a hole is, you know, to a thousandth of an inch. And you get so darn many of those things as gifts and stuff when you're in business. So I remember this guy give it to him. As soon as the guy left, he said, "Ah, hell, Bob, you can probably use that." And he gave me this, you know. You know, if you wouldn't bought that today, I don't know, 30, 40 bucks, something like that. But, you know, this kind of guy he was. He knew I, you know, would want it, and he said, "Well, what the hell am I going to leave it lay around here?" And
yeah, well, that's because he respects
yeah,
you.
right. So, you know, I got a lot of these things like that. But that's, so we had a pretty close relationship there, I guess. I would always like to got that wooden box, not because I couldn't make one like it, but sort of because it was his, you know. I guess some girl was there. I don't know who she was. Was that then his daughter-in-law or somebody was going to use it for a chest for jewelry or something, you know. And I was always like, boy, what a waste that. But where was I to speak up? You know, I wanted to buy it and everything else when I was buying all that other stuff. You know, it was that big, and it was on. It used to be in the Colby Lane house there. You remember? It used to keep all this stuff in it.
It's probably my mom.
Maybe she's the one who got it then.
We got it.
Oh, you got it then? Well, I say girls. I remember. I thought she would have been younger than being.
You still want?
No, and I don't want to take that away from her or nothing. But I always, you know, it seemed it should have stayed in the tools, you know, where it was, you know. And
it was awful big for a jewelry chest.
well, what did she do with it? I remember she was talking.
It was like.
Now let's see. What would your
alongside-
mother's name been? Let me get it.
She was Jeanette,
Jeanette.
and she died about a year and a half ago.
Wasn't there one star with the R? What was her name?
Rhoda.
Rhoda.
Sheldon's wife was Rhoda.
Okay.
Yeah, she probably was there too, in on it, maybe a different chip.
Yeah.
But
Now
we
let's
had
see.
one like right at an end table, like for a
Yeah.
couch. There's nothing in it at all,
Isn't that something?
and it's beautiful. It's, you know, he signed it and
Well, that was his toolbox then. The one he had, it was in there, and he used to have all that stuff in it, you know.
the top lifted
Yeah,
up.
the top lifted up and all.
drawers, yeah.
But it seemed to me they were all talking about, oh, what a beautiful jewelry chest or silver or some darn thing they were going to put in it, you know. Yeah, and I thought, well, this thing should be in a tool shop with tools and being used, you know. That's where it was, where he really made it for, you know. And, right. And, you know, I've always been going to make me one, something like that. I don't know, I just never found the time to get that metal one there, and it keeps it, but it was a lot bigger than that and stuff. But it was,
Sure was not a jewelry chest.
no, but they were going to use it for something like, well, they weren't going to use it for tooling, obviously, you know. And no, it really should stay with the family for some use. I mean, I wouldn't, well, since they wanted it, you know, and I thought, well, really, what else did he have that could fit into a house? And, you know, you couldn't take mics or something like that and lay them around, but that could set in a house and look like furniture. And, you know, it's acceptable.
It does. It's a
Right.
nice piece.
It's a nice looking
Uh-huh.
piece of work there. And,
Well, it's really good that you were able to pick up this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just would have fallen by the wayside.
yeah. Oh, it was sad what happened on that, like when I got that machine, you know, the cutter, that whole spindle, all that was gone. It wasn't there. And the cutters he had taken to somebody that made cutters in town, was going to make a new set of cutters for him. Now, he could make cutters, but at that age it was, something had to be jobbed out somewhere just for time, you know. And, but the housing and all that they all went on to, Seymour had those. See, he knew, but he didn't know where they were. So I took everything with the understanding that, well, eventually when he finds those, ship those to me, you know, or call me and I'll come down and get them. And that went on, and I don't know how it happened, but they went out in the garbage man. Somebody remembered being when they were moving, as being put out by the curb in a box with a whole bunch of stuff, and they started describing them. And me and Seymour were talking, and Seymour said, well, cripes, that's that housing, that's that stuff. Well, somebody cleaned out the darn house, I guess, at the moving day when finally the new people, and they showed up. But we couldn't find them that day I was there when I was getting all that stuff. You know, there was a lot of people there, and I had this buddy of mine with a trailer and a GMC wagon, and we made everything up here in one load.
It's a lot of equipment.
Oh, it was. We had that thing so packed you couldn't believe it. It was just creeping along the highway. I didn't think it would all that lathe and that machine out there. And
you got the big machine, this lathe.
Yeah, and the bench that big machine's on. And there was a lot of bamboo and just a lot of little things. I didn't think it was that much stuff when it was all around the room. You know, it didn't look that big.
How many different machines does a piece of bamboo have to go through before it's a rod?
Oh.
How many stages? How many operations?
Well, I don't know. You could probably add up somewhere around 50 operations, you know, counting the hand operations like that straightening and stuff like that. You know, I'm talking about the ferrules, making that, and, you know.
Like, in terms of man hours, it must take you.
Well, I never did count them because it'd probably scare me, you know, but I would say, God, it must be somewhere around 20, 30 hours, even with the little bit of production I have in the way of machinery, you know.
Just for one run.
Yeah. So there's no big money in it. You know, you gotta like to make them. And
yeah, you gotta do it for instead of
right. Yeah. If I put that same amount of effort into making something that would stamp them out like a punch press, I'd probably make some money.
Yeah, you could. You really could.
But you gotta do something you really like to do, you know. That's like Morris used to say. Boy, one of his favorite things, we'd get talking. There was many a times it would be, oh, I know I stayed there till 2 o'clock in the morning more than once, and his wife would come in there and, Morris, and you know, I hated to leave because it looked like I was trying to get away from him, and we'd get onto a subject and we'd just keep going and going and going, you know, and there was just no end to it. And he used to always say, boy, he said, I wish I would have met you, you know, 20 years ago. I'd have got out of that damn, you know, shop and we'd been making rods, you know, because he thought that was the ultimate of his whole career, I think, of creating something, you know, that was really beautiful, and a lot of people appreciate it. Yeah, right. I mean, you know, you make tools and dies and everything else, and once they're made, they look good right then. They go in a machine, and once the program's over, they're scrap iron. You know, you make the most beautiful dies in the world, the most beautiful tooling, but once the whole program's over, a new model change, well, the damn thing goes into the junkyard, and
there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, nobody looks at it.
People that don't know fishing at all look at the rods and you can see the quality.
Yeah, most anybody can look at a fish rod after it's all done and really appreciate that and everything. Like here's a reel seat here that we played around with quite a bit, and a lot of it was his idea, but there was a few problems in here. I remember like this one here. See this little threaded part? It's all out of aluminum. That's aluminum. And well, this is one here I just put together with some bad sticks for my boy, 1973. And I used some junker wood on there. See how I kind of got a bad spot in there. But we used to make those. Now we worked together on that kind, and that was his idea. One of the problems was this back end. See, most of the time you use a cap that's got a hood all the way over the back. Well, that requires a die, and there's some scrap, and you know, and the die doesn't always work that good. Well, this allowed a way of using just a piece of tubing. See, and then that little piece of wood shows out the back, which kind of looked kind of pretty. And from there on, we played a lot with this darn stuff. And since then, I've done a few more things with it. And I've gone into some real pretty woods, which I found some sources for. And I know he'd just blew his mind if he'd found some of this then. Like this zebra wood, boy, when you get that polished down, it's just beautiful. This thing here is called cocobolo. It's let's see, I got some that are more exotic yet. Look at that.
And these are all for the handle.
Yeah, well, it'll be in that area, that reel seat there. So.
Yeah.
Something.
You Sandy's gonna get the flat side for the seat.
Yeah, right. That'll go in that milling machine out there to do that part. See. And you know, we talked about getting some nice woods there, and well, I don't know. Before you know it, I moved up here, and he came up here a couple times. Well, the last time, of course, this one lived in town, you know. They had a big trailer, and they were on their way out west or something. I remember once, maybe twice. They stopped by, and then I went down there, and I was to see her before she passed away. Where was it? Hunter Woods there, or Hunter something or another. 14-mile road
Yeah.
place. What did it? Then all of a sudden, I didn't even know she died. It was quite a while. Somebody told me. The heart, probably the same thing.
Yeah, it was.
You spend a lot of your nights over there late on.
Oh God, we used to really couldn't get away once we get talking about this or that, and we get on to different subjects about.
I can just hear Fanny coming in.
Oh God, she'd come in there, and she would get after, and then she'd get after him, and I don't know. I used to feel guilty, like I was responsible, and but yet, we'd have something interesting going, and he'd get a little mad at her, and you'd think he got mad, but I guess he really got mad, He'd tell her, "You go sit down now a while." And I remember her telling me how sometimes, she'd hear him, they'd go to bed, and it'd be been there 3 hours, and she'd hear rustling around. She'd get up, and doggone there, he'd be out there in the shop writing something down or sketching something. And he got an idea during the night, and so he wanted to write it down or something before you forget, And so that used to be funny. She'd get up there and try to get him back, and he'd say, "Leave me alone now. I got to get this down on paper or something," And so he thought all night long on these different things, And he was quite a guy.
Yeah, you must have really appreciated having somebody like that.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. It worried me sometimes that being old, and I thought, well, I'm putting too much energy, maybe I'm tiring him out, or something. But I don't guess he got tired too easy, boy. He'd keep going, man.
My favorite story is just when we were out at the lake.
Yeah.
Whoever's it was.
He probably had to row, didn't he?
It started to pour. I was in the middle. I started rowing. I thought I was going on along a good clip. He just didn't move over. He started hauling like I've never seen anybody row before. And I made a terrible mistake. I said, "Boy, that's pretty good for an old man." Oh, God, he didn't like that.
Yeah, he really hated, I think, or feared death, not of death itself, but because, well, what a waste, I ain't gonna be able to do anymore, or maybe, I don't know how he believed that way, but he wasn't gonna be able to complete right now what he was doing, and all the things he had lined up out here, God, there was just all kinds of things. We had 3 or 4 different machines that would have made that thing look like junk, and which since then, really, I haven't got it here, but I got this another machine in town, that I bought. And it's a great big grinder, surface grinder. It weighs about 6,000 pounds. And, it's real precision weighs, it'll really travel on real neat. Because see the way that table travels on there, that's only on an I-beam, piece of I-beam, and it's wearing, and pretty soon it isn't traveling true under that thing anymore. I mean, by true, I mean it's off 2 or 3 thousandths maybe in time. So this grinder I bought, it will be the ultimate. It's got a hydraulic table instead of those gears. Now when you got gears, you got chatter, even though they're microscopic, and the cut isn't as smooth. But hydraulic will be, smooth. It's a constant even pressure. So I bought this big grinder base down in Detroit. Oh gosh, I've had it 2 years now, but then the divorce came out, so it's had to set in this little commercial piece of property I own in town. I rent out the building, And I'm going to get it out here in the next few weeks, I hope, or as soon as I can find somebody to haul it, because it weighs like 6,000 pounds, and it don't have wheels on it, And it will go over in that other corner, and I will take that whole top mechanism, that table and that stuff I built, and put it right on it. And so then that will travel. And then it'll be real precision and everything. And that's what we discussed then. But I looked for that thing for, I would say I seriously looked at it for 7-8 years for that type of machine in surplus, because it's a new one like it's at least $50,000, and I found this thing surplus in the aircraft industry, and I got it for $1,800. So I couldn't hardly go wrong, And I've had it up here. I've had a couple guys look at it up here, and geez, I've been offered $3,000 for it already to put it back into use as a surface grinder, because some of the parts are gone, but they could get them and put it back in that use. And it'll really make a super table. And that's what we always agreed should have been, Morris and me. And we said, geez, where are you going to find one? We could find them around Detroit, use surface grinders like that for 10 grand, 12, 15 grand. But that's still too much to pay for this kind of a thing. So I happened to just find one that they had converted it to a milling operation. And it wasn't a surface grinder anymore, but the table and all was there, the basics of the precision part. And so I got that thing for $1,800, and that was a steal. And So I got that on there, and I have to get it out here, and it's going to be a booger getting it in there, but I'll get it in. I'll get a Caterpillar trailer or something, I think, with a big winch on it, something we can pull it up onto it. And then when I cast that floor, I got a, I don't know if you noticed, it was near the front end in the floor, there was an eye ring just sticking above the cement a little. Well, I took a 1-inch rod, made a big loop, and it's sticking into the cement down there about 2 feet down. See, so then when we get this thing in the doorway, we'll just hook a chain onto it and be able to pull it right out, and it'll go down on the floor with some rollers. So I had that thinking of that because there was no way I could pull it off of a trailer, you know. And
Geez, how are you going to get it in?
well, that'll get it in. See, we'll back it in the doorway, then we'll hook a big chain onto that thing I've got embedded in the floor when I made the floor.
Oh, okay.
Then we'll pull the truck right out and gradually have it shored up on some timbers, and that'll get it down on some pipe. And once it's on pipe, you can move a mountain on little pieces of pipe, you know, with a little ratchet and come along or a chain fall. Then we can move it around the floor. Then we get it over that corner.
Some of you he talked about.
Oh yeah,
20 years ago.
we always thought if we could ever find one of those something like that was scrapped enough and depreciated down, you know, financially, so that you could afford it, why it would be the ultimate. So I looked around there and I told a few machinery dealers about it, and one in Detroit there, he called me up here about 2 years ago and said, I've got this thing, and it ain't good for really what it was originally for, and so I come down there and got it. Yeah. So I'll take some of that stuff off of his machine, the basic top table, and put it on there and let it go like that.
Were you making these rods pretty much in the same kind of design, or did you take this table that he had and change over to what he was doing?
No. See, when you make that template, you can make almost any kind of design. You know, now really, what he did a lot of times would take a rod that the action felt good, you know. Well, measure that rod and set that template to that, and then maybe you think, well, it's a little soft, you know, so we'll change it a little. Then you start experimenting and build it up a little stiffer, or vice versa. It's a little too stiff. Well, let's make one a little softer, so we change the dimensions a little. That's what changes is dimensions. Well, along the heat treating of the cane too has got something to do with it, but basically it's the dimensions of it and the quality of the cane, and so that's where we played around. That's why, like I say, probably hardly much more than 2 of his rods were ever the same, because he was always trying to experiment and get as many new ideas in here before he died to start with. And you know, knowing time was limited, why?
Did you ever debug it, the whole thing?
Oh, I don't think so. No, hell, there was always.
Yeah, he left a lot of them unfinished.
There was always so many unfinished things that you could do. But really, that's what makes everybody's going to. If you ever do any amount of stuff, something's always going to be left. I mean, you just haven't got time. I got gobs of things around here I've started. You wouldn't believe it. That whole garage is full of them. And, you know, every once in a while I go back to it and get it going a little more. And what are you going to do? You just got to get what you can do.
Just got to do it.
Do what you can do. That's about all there is. There's just time. You don't waste too much time. Well, you can.
Well, he seemed to have done.
He accomplished probably what 3 men would. 3 good men would do in a lifetime.
Yeah, a longer time than he had.
Yeah. There was no doubt. There's supermen in this world, and he had to be one of them, you know, in his field and stuff. What he accomplished. And an amazing thing, a lot of people will tell you, if you get into the tool thing, boy, he didn't go out and buy the latest and the newest stuff, you know. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of people who can build beautiful stuff if you want to go buy brand new machines and the ultimate, you know. Pay 20, 30 grand for a lathe. Well, hell, he'd go buy a damn Sears and Roebuck lathe there and do things on it that people couldn't do on a $20,000 lathe. And that's just by
creating
right. That's right. Like I remember on that lathe there, which I don't know how he did it, but he had a piece of brass that he drilled a 1/4-inch hole through, 30-inch length, and maintained like a couple thousandths accuracy of that hole being straight. And I don't know how he did it. And I haven't been explained by anybody else how he could have done it either.
This is not a real complicated one.
No, that lathe, well, it's kind of a simple lathe. It's a very inexpensive lathe as far as lathes go. I mean, you know, today that lathe, the way it sits there, is about $2,000 maybe with everything on it. But that's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at another lathe, another brands that look like that, and it can be $5,000 too. So he'd take a machine like that, and like I say, he drilled a hole through. He made a lot of money on that too. I remember he was telling me. I forgot the figure, but I know it was at that time. It was more than $500 or something he got for each hole, and nobody else could drill them damn holes accurate. And they had really expensive machines and were trying it. But he had some damn engineering principle, which he always said he was going to tell me how he did it. He was going to draw it out. And he died, and we never did do that. He used to, every time he'd talk to me about it, he'd just wink, And and I don't know, and he said, I'll tell you someday. And we never did get that part, but I don't know how the hell he did it on that lathe. But that's how he had quite a few of those little lathes like that in his shop. And he used to tell me figuring for the money, he'd get more work out of that, for the investment than he could out of some of this fancy stuff. If he was using it. I mean, I said, well, I can't just hire somebody off the street, and, them guys got to have a big fancy machine, which, will tolerate a lot of mistakes and stuff. Those kind of machines, you sort of got to feel it, you got to feel when something's going wrong, and you just get with it, it's sloppy compared to the gears and everything else compared to other things, but he'd doctor it up like, I remember the thread on there for cutting threads. You have a long thread that runs along there. That's what you use when you're cutting threads on something. Like a screw has got threads around. Okay, well with that, you can cut threads. Well, they're not going to be much more accurate than that thread is. Well, that's one thing he would chase and make a new thread and put it on there. Replace that thread on there with one he made. And,
So it'd be right on.
Yeah, then it would be right on a little better than that one somehow. And by gosh, he did work on that damn lathe that was amazing.
He had been in the touch,
Oh, he had a brain, boy. He was something super when it come to doing things like that.
Yeah, this is all, I mean, all I really read about is in the travel book.
Yeah.
That he learned from other guys. He said
Yeah.
from other guys who did the same thing. And he couldn't have had all that much experience, even learning from these other guys, being an apprentice.
Well, he would snap up an idea real quick. Like some guy might have to watch a guy for a week. He'd probably watch him for a few minutes. And he had grasped it. Then he would improve on the idea. See?
Yeah.
I mean, this is something a lot of people do. I do this a lot. I like a lot of things, and I got to do it. I don't know about it, but I can go around the shop and drift around and watch and see what they're doing, And then by God, I got this. It puts the idea in your head, and then you improve on it. You know what I mean? Because it opens a whole new field. You may have been looking at the thing all backwards, how in the hell do you even go about it? And you just see the principle. Then that's all. You can go back and go from there. And it's just like the bamboo. He came to me, and I told him a few principles. That's all I could tell him. I mean, he had the brain and everything else out, and he figured how to make that table run when I gave him a pile of gears and stuff. I said, this is a gearbox on an outboard motor now. I know there's a way to make this work. And 2 days later, he had it working.
He was the one who just
Right.
Figured out how to plug it in.
Figured out how to plug it in.
Principles.
Right.
He had the
Right, the brains, and put it together.
Yeah, did you ever compare your fly rods and his?
Oh, I don't know. That's nothing you can really compare because what is good to one man isn't to the other. This fly rod field, one guy said, oh, God, I hate that kind of action. This guy, oh, man, that's the greatest thing going.
Yeah,
So, it isn't... some of his rods are really beautiful. I mean, I really could like to fish with them. Some of them are lousy. I mean, they're either too soft or too stiff, for my way of fishing, And so...
Did you ever use some of his rods that you like?
Oh, yeah. I got one that's still back at the old house. I got stuff over there yet. I haven't even got out here. Got a cooperative former wife there. She leaves the stuff. But I got a big rod case, and I got a couple of his rods in that, and I should get them out here. But I got to redo this house some. There's some more room, seeing. And I'll get them out here.
Those are really antiques, eh?
Oh, yeah. I don't realize, boy, there's guys really starting to pay some money for them just to have them in their collection now.
Yeah.
As we had a few guys write about him, and then these couple articles that I've had done on me recently, I've mentioned in them, that I've acquired his stuff and so forth. So that's making them go more. Then there was a book just a while ago, and a guy wrote in there that I acquired the stuff of Morris Kushner. Did you see that book by Martin Keene?
Sounds familiar, that name.
Yeah. Oh, I guess he tried to buy a bunch of the rods at last, or maybe he did, I don't know. And he's up in Connecticut, and he did a chapter on him. He's got Morris the Rod Maker. The book is... what the hell is it called? Well, the name is Martin Keene. If you went to any bookstore, and it just came out here recently. Let's see. I can find his ad right here. And he's got a chapter in there, which, again, that might open something up.
What's the other chapter?
Oh, boy. Well, if I find his ad here, tackle. He puts it in every one of these darn things. Tackle. Well, the name is Martin Keene. Now, I know if he went to a library or...
You probably fogged it up too.
What?
Against the phone.
Oh, so probably the last couple times.
Well, let's see. You're Seymour's boy? No.
No.
Yeah.
Jeanette
Yeah.
was Morris's daughter.
Okay, there. That's where I'm missing the point.
Yeah.
And Seymour's Morris's daughter, and Sheldon's... Or no, Seymour's Morris's son. Sheldon,
And
Victor,
That's it.
and Jeanette.
just the Voelker.
Yeah,
Okay.
Seymour and Jeanette are dead. Victor and Sheldon are still around.
Yeah, Sheldon's in Chicago, right? And Victor.
Now, he was the one that was in advertising. What did he get into? Didn't he work... Oh, the financing. Wasn't he in the financing company?
Victor?
No, Sheldon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The
GFC or GAF.
See, General
Somewhere out of
Corporation.
Pennsylvania, wasn't he?
Yeah, General Acceptance.
Oh, gee.
And he's still with that. He become vice president or president or some darn thing.
As far as I know. Since those two deaths, we've hardly communicated.
You pardon?
Hardly communicated with Sheldon.
You mean you don't see him anymore, hardly?
Not really. Which is a shame.
Okay, here's the deal. Classic rods and rod makers, and he's got a whole chapter in there. Morris the Rod Maker.
Morris the Rabbit. That's
Yeah.
the same title as Travers' chapter.
Yeah, this guy here, some of his stuff was kind of bad, I thought. The Morris about Morris was pretty accurate, but some of his other stuff was really bad, I thought. But stuff that I could watch closely and know about.
Yeah, we're trying to sell this guy a copy.
I don't know if he'd buy anything. This book is $15, and I didn't think it was quite worth it. It's 265 pages, and some of the pictures were too small to really make anything out of them, and it was just, I don't know. I don't think it's going over as good as he thought it was going over.
That's probably where I'm just trying to
Right.
photograph these rods and put them in a close-up perspective and not really, alienate them from what they are, which are fishing rods.
Yeah, boy, I wish I had more. See, everything I've got is
I think vintage.
sold. Well, I'm really behind. I must have, I don't know how many darn orders. I just probably got at least 50 orders. If I had them made, I'd have them, delivered. But since this divorce thing, well, hell, I've been out of business, sort of, until I get all this thing wired. And then, like I say, it's starting that thing in September, and all winter here, man, this snow here was something else. It was the worst winter we had in 10 years. And once I got that building and shoved that stuff in, I couldn't do any more. So all that siding, I just put that on this spring, really. It was just Celotex, the whole outside. And by next weekend, I could have that thing running, probably, wired. But I don't know as I will. If you guys would have said, you were going to put it off another week, then I would have. But I think I'll do that, and then I got a few other things to do on the place, like that window's got to be done. The bugs are coming like crazy, and so I got to make some windows in there and get lights, and then maybe just concentrate on getting that other machine in there too, and then I'll have everything under one roof and really start going then.
Yeah, we got a shot of these antique rods in here.
Yeah. Well,
We did get. We should get a shot too of them.
cut this strip of cane down into a 60-degree triangle, and as you see here, this is roughly a 1/4 inch square, a little more. And we got our table on this end, feeding it into the cutter. We're going to put the stick on here and feed it under the cutter. Well, since it isn't running, I'd work this by hand, and this will travel under here while that cutter is turning. Sort of wood, like wood
Keep
routing
slicing
operation.
this cane right down?
Right. That would be on top of that bar, normally. By the time we arrived at the other end, we would come out of there with a 60-degree triangle, like that, which is also compound taper. You can see how this end's much smaller. So we got the two ends. And of course, that's what gives the overall rod its taper.
Is this hole that's necessary to
That's
keep
what I hold it
connecting?
onto the template with.
Oh.
Hey, why don't I get the plain machine alone, and then
Okay.
I'll get the this piece, and then have you
Okay.
just in your hands.
Yeah,
writing
even
about it.
just explain it
Right.
like you just did.
Okay.
Just let me take a reading here.
We're trying to...
Up in the rod, all that's determined on this template.
Yeah.
And once I create a template, which sort of is really creating the rod, I have a drawing and I keep that template, those dimensions.
So that you can interchange
Right.
it.
Well, I can repeat it in years to come. I can set this template up and cut another template to those exact dimensions again, and I can, duplicate the rod. Or I can take anybody's rod and duplicate it too, in the same way by making a template off of the measurements from the rod.
Yeah. Well, so once you make that template, then you've got a whole
Oh yeah,
selection.
once I set this scene, and that's a big job, is making that template. That's what all these little adjustments are on here. Now that's one of the things that I did that was different over Morris's thing. Now see, if you look at that, what's happening here as I move that? See that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost like a little rocker arm.
Right, little rocker arms. So I got my indicator set up. I hook up back here when the template wasn't in there, and I can interpret my measurements onto this. See? Then when I put my template on there, I cut my template, and
What do you make
ahead
the
and
template out of? The template has to be metal?
That's aluminum. It doesn't necessarily. I think, oh heck, I've seen people use hard maple on that.
Yeah, just as long as it's going to be
Right,
sturdy.
it's got to be sturdy and hold up. I kind of hesitate about the wood a little, maybe, expansion, contraction, movement of woods. And so I've used this here.
Yeah.
Which aluminum isn't that expensive. That would last a long time.
Well, like with the adjustments, could you make any size rod you want?
Yeah.
I mean, like even a big, like a coho rod for something?
Oh yeah,
Should I
sure. I'd make almost anything out of this. In fact, one guy wants me to make a pool stick out of it. You don't use laminating the 6 pieces together.
Yeah.
So it's.
Ah.
Now this machine, basically, Morris made most of this gearbox and this table, and I've, like I said before, incorporated some of my own ideas. One of them was this handle set up here. This is the shift. He had it running back and forth automatically. In other words, it got to that end, it shifted itself, and it went back this way. Well, I didn't like that. I liked it to stop there, and I took the stick off. And what I do with this, I manually put it into the other gear. This here, I put my palm on here. This enables, so when I'm putting it into that other gear, that I can't automatically pull it all the way back into forward again. I have to palm this, see? And I released it, now that I went back. It automatically stops by a cam underneath there. When it gets to the end of its travel, it stops. And then to put it the other way, I have to palm this and do this. And so that was one of the little changes I put in there. It was always kind of scary the way it was running back and forth by itself, and I was always afraid something was going to jam up under the cutter, but he kind of liked automation, I guess. And I said, I wasn't in that big of a hurry. I just do this and...
Yeah, well, this is a lot safer. Besides, like you said, couldn't you ruin a rod, if you went
Yeah,
back
I
and
think he had a
forth?
few times... Well, he used a different hold-down principle. He had some little clamps that held this down. And it stopped just short of the clamp, or short of that cutter. Now, it's obvious the clamp was sticking way up there. If something would have went wrong, it would have run that clamp mechanism right into the cutter. It would have, I don't know what would have happened. Well, my hold-down mechanism goes right through the cutter. See, right underneath it. I have no big clamp. He had a clamp set up on here, and it had little gripper teeth in it. Pull this. Well, mine's that little pinhole. The pin does not stick up into the cutter. It's just short of it by a few thousandths, so it goes right on through it. And that was something I discussed with him, and he just never... Oh, I think he kind of liked it, but there just wasn't time. He kept working the way he...
Yeah, well, like you say, the way he felt so pressured, maybe that's why...
Yeah, right. He did it this other way, and we discussed creaky doors.
Let me try and get one nice
Okay.
clean shot.
Is the tape going to be in the way?
Get out and do it.
Right. Well, my grandfather too was a tool and die maker
Right.
for years and years.
Right.
You know, and like, geez, even when he was 80 years old, he'd come over to our house, and if he saw a bush standing there without any protection, he'd go out and get some wood, you know, and build something around. Just had to be working all the time.
Oh yeah, you get a few kind of machines, like all these other things in here, like that old mill. I couldn't get them. Just rebuilt that a while ago, strictly for making the real seat parts. Now this big lathe you see here wasn't so covered with junk. I bought that. Hope someday to make a fishing reel, and that's what I was thinking. That's what I bought that machine for. Got a real good buy on it. Hope to redo it here someday. Well, where are we at now?
Yeah, what was I gonna get that?
3, and this we're going to cut to. This is what we're going to end up with. Well, maybe these 3 should be shown in this sequence.
Yeah.
A few steps in between there, but
Why don't you just roll this, Scott? If you can just
this is
explain
basically
again,
what we're doing with this machine is we're cutting it down from this large bulk and arriving at this final little 60-degree triangle here, which is really a compound taper. And you can see the both ends. Oops, well, that's a scrapper anyway. And that's the taper on one end. We're tapering it down to that.
You know, if I do this, the macro, can I get?
Yeah, you can go all the way in on that, on this, how that is tapered.
Yeah, it's in here, but what if you do this?
Yeah, click the ring. I better turn this.
Well, no, that's the reason. It's just, well, anything. Well, you notice all my pieces are all split. You do that right away. And because over the years, it would be moving. It would, expansion and contraction, even from weather or anything. And the cane would check all over the whole diameter. So if we got one split in it, that allows it to move and get rid of its energies, or what you want to call it, you know, right there.
Would that do it to the rods, once the rods are laminated?
No,
there's
once
no
that's
more
happened, by then I've heat treated the cane, taken all that moisture out of it, and it settles down and it doesn't move anymore. Oh, it might, but it'd be such a microscopic amount you would never know it. But if this was left solid, it would crack here, it would crack over here, maybe here. Well, there's a case right there, see? It cracked here, even with that. 1, 2, here. But it'd be much worse.
Yeah, do you gotta use special cane for this?
Oh
You
yeah,
take it
this
out
is
all
a
the time?
oh yeah, this is what's called Tonkin cane. It comes from an area in communist China now, which is north of North Vietnam a little bit, and it's the only place in the world where this particular quality of cane comes from. You get the dense fiber, and which gives this particular rod the action and everything we want.
That's great. Well, so how do you get this cane, or do you have to select
Well,
it, or you get it just imported?
Everything I've got is, geez, probably 30, 40 years old, but it hasn't been coming into this country until, last 5, 6 years when we started dealing with communist China again. And so there is a supply coming in now. But I haven't had to get any of that yet, and but I probably will.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I've got a few around here. I bought out a few people. A lot of that came from Dickerson, which Lyle Dickerson was one of the great rod makers, and he lives up north here about, oh, what the heck, 50 miles north of us here. And Kushner went and got some cane from him too while they were living. He met him. And,
Well, it sounds like a fraternity.
yeah, right.
Everybody knows each other.
Everybody gets to know everybody.
For sure.
Can we try that one?
The cranking?
How you would actually move it through here?
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
if I shut up while you do it. I mean, if I forget to ask questions, just feel free
Yeah,
to
we-
keep going. 'Cause I don't want me to want to-
Okay, this table travels underneath the cutter. The cutter's stationary there, and it's a carbide bit because the reason we use carbide, there's a lot of silicone in this bamboo. High-speed steel glazes over pretty fast. So really this stuff is really pretty hard on cutters and machining. And this is basically a milling machine, and except the cutters turn around 7,000 RPMs there. And this piece of cane, once I've cut it out of this larger diameter billet, roughly to a 1/4 inch square, depending on what size rod we're building at that time. I'll put it on a template. Now, the template will travel underneath the cutter. Now, of course, when electricity was hooked up here, this table would travel by itself. When it got to the far end here, we pick the stick off of the template, and we'll have a stick with the 60-degree triangle on it as such. And that's a compound taper, which gives the action to the rod. And that is Well, the way to cut the sticks mechanically, this can be done by planing by hand too, in planer blocks. In other words, this template, you could have a block of steel with the grooves cut in it, see? And you would lay this stick right in the groove and run a hand plane, over it, and you can get that same type of thing, but you sure can't make much time, and I really question the ability to repeat it many times too, where this machine, once I set it up, and I could run quite a few rods off of there before
You
it
get
would
a
change.
certain quality of it
Right.
too, right?
And then have a repeat of the same thing, because actually a person buys a 7.5-foot rod and he shows it to a friend or somebody else. The friend kind of likes it, he calls you, he wants to get the same thing, not something that's a little different, and so you got to have some precision to it and the ability to repeat things.
And of course, the neat thing I think about this is that everything you make is going to be custom. Because each one you do,
Oh, yeah.
you got the template. It's going to be, like you said, a little different.
Yeah, it's well, I vary the rods somewhat too in the handle shape and the type of reel seat the guy wants and all that type of stuff. And then I make everything on the rod, like the reel seat hardware and the ferrules and the whole works now. Ferrules were always one big problem. Morris was always complaining about, and he was starting to get into that, but he knew he didn't have time to really do it all, and so he was always trying to buy some whenever he could. And the ferrule, that's the connector, the joint in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's something that's got to be pretty precision and pretty durable too.
It's got to have just enough tension and not too much there.
Right, or else it comes apart, twist in operation, different things like that.
What kind of tolerances are you working with?
Well, when I set this machine template up, I set it up to 1/1000th of an inch from, I have an indicator and I set my template in there and I try and maintain 1/1000th of an inch. Of course, this probably after gluing and things that might change a little, but I start out with that. And I generally end up with a rod. Sometimes it comes out right on the button. I generally end up with 2/1000ths or so on the finished rod.
It's close.
What I want.
What happens then? So you cut. How many of these pieces you're going to eventually have to cut to make like
One rod would
one
take 18 pieces. Considering if you had 2 tips with a rod, which most people buy 2 tips with it.
Oh, you mean the end
tip
of the other
section,
end of the
right?
fair?
Yeah, being 6 in a section, 6 pieces, I would end up with 18 of those. Now, I don't take them all out of one piece of cane like this either. I generally take 3 pieces of cane like this and take 2 pieces out of each one and glue them together. In other words, one finished stick is going to have from 3 different pieces of cane. That way you kind of assure yourself that it's some organic and there could be a little difference from one to the other, and that way the time you take it out of 3 different ones, you're bound to get a pretty good stick. Now, that's one of the harder parts. You can say out of a cheaper rod, these people make bamboo rods for $5 or so. In years past, well, they didn't bother sorting or anything like that. Just cut everything up and take a handful and glue them together. Well, I match those nodes carefully so that no 2 nodes come together on the glued up section either. Now, the node is this here little wall right here,
Yeah.
And like we get 6 of these glued together. I'll show you one I got somewhere that you'd go around the hexagon, you'd see they'd be staggered. See?
Yeah, like
From one panel to the other. Like this panel, the one right next to it wouldn't have this little.
they'd be down a little.
Yeah, it'd be down a little, right?
Yeah.
Like a varied joint for a piece of wood.
Right. You don't want to put those together. So I take 2 out of 3 different ones to end up with the 6. And, so that's just one of the things that takes a little more time.
So then you have to then you got all those pieces and you have to laminate them, use the same machine?
No, I have a gluing thing, which again was back in town there. It's a process where we paint the glue on the stick and then wrap it with thread in a uniform pattern. It's a crisscross pattern. And this really gives it a uniform pressure all the way around, full length of that stick. And it just wrings the doggone glue right out of it,
Yeah, you must have to put that thread right next to each other like a coil.
Yeah, it is. I got a stick in the house, I guess. I got one somewhere to have the, hang on, I can show you.
I can get all this.
That bamboo right there isn't really so desirable to look at. See, that's kind of small. This picture over here now, this would probably be something better.
Yeah, look with this
That stuff, I
different
don't know if I'll
sizes.
even ever use that. I got that given to me, and it's not really.
Chuck the left.
But there are some. I cut this cane when it was in the bulk. That's when you could spot this node quicker. So at that point is when I divide it up into the compartments. then I keep it through all the different stages. Like, well, I'm going to straighten the stage where each of these little bumps will have to be straightened out. See, there's a node right there. That place there, and I've worked on that already. See the funny grain that was slightly raised there. Well, I'm going to have to heat that and do this to it. Maybe you saw it in one of those pictures.
Oh yeah, where you're over the torch.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what will happen there. I'll get that straightened out. Right in there is one that's kind of a little dippy. I have to bring that one up a little. Here's a high one. I have to bring that down. So all the way through there, every one of them's got to be done. And then when I get a whole group of them straightened, I put them right in the same compartment, another rack, you know, and that way keep them in the same sequence all the time. And so that's some of the work is hidden behind the scene, you know.
Yeah, well, this way, otherwise you'd go nuts trying to organize all
Yeah,
this
oh
stuff.
yeah, you couldn't. And the reason for that color is on the end is so that I don't in for in something. You know what I mean? Because that would change that whole area sequence of where those nodes are. Just might be if you took one of these out of here and in for in, it would be exactly the same as the one next to it. Then when you glued them together, you'd have nodes together.
You'd have a piece apart, huh?
Right. You'd have a. What was that stick I saw? I thought there was a glued up one in here. It was broken on somebody's.
Oh, is this a finished one?
Well, it's a broken section of somebody else's rod, see?
Oh.
That's what happens when car door gets them.
Just trying to figure out in my head how all this goes together.
And it's so shattered there, it's pretty hard to see. I got some pieces in the house so we could see that a little better on.
What do you gotta be particular about this wire or not?
Them guides, that's one of the things I do buy. Because it wouldn't pay, you know, you're talking pennies there, and it wouldn't pay to make those.
Yeah. Was it stainless steel wire?
Yeah, they're stainless. No, some of them are hard steels. There's stainless. There's chrome-plated ones. There's 2 or 3 different kinds on the market.
Can you tie them on here like that?
Yep, I wrapped that on with silk. And
laminated? Is that like kind of like tying a fly when you get
yeah,
that one?
right. Oh, it's got a lot of varnish on it then too.
Yeah, 'cause I've only been fly fishing, I think.
Huh?
I've only been fly fishing once in my life.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I never had anybody really had the equipment or any time to teach me. But I've been fishing with my father since I was, that big. We've been out messing around, catching. I never really caught the big ones I wanted, you know. But I have fun. I always like going out on the boat fishing. So we do a lot of fishing. We live right around the torch. We go out in Lake St. Clair there, you know. Didn't you tell me you used to live around Birmingham?
Well, I lived in Livonia, Orchard Lake Road and 8 Mile up in there, Merriman Road.
Sure. Oh, that's the stomping ground. So.
Yeah.
There's some good fishing there, but
oh, it's improving. If anything, it's better than it ever was. I mean, they're cleaning up a lot of rivers down there and planting trout, and it's better than it ever was. Well, I wouldn't say ever, but it's probably in the last 30, 40 years it's really better now.
Have you ever heard of a guide down there named Bill Trombley? He's down in Lake St. Clair.
Oh, a muskie guide, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't get into this kind of fishing.
Yeah, I didn't think so. It's just that I only heard him once. My father gave a workshop, you know, on fishing.
Yeah.
Geez,
muskie trolling.
So it's already done.
Oh.
Alright, that's cool.
But you can get it again if you want. How many feet you got left there?
50. That's good.
That good?
Maybe Alright, so yeah, the camera did get...
Well, what we are doing in this operation here is turning a ring off of this nickel-silver tubing here, and the ring is the reinforcing ring that goes around the top of the female part of the ferrule. Well, really what I do is make up quite a few of these rings and then make up the next part of the ferrule, and then I solder them all together later on and put them all back in the lathe and dress them down, true them up a little, and finally we end up with a set of nickel-silver ferrules.
I see.
All that part, it didn't part off quite right. The tool bit just wasn't probably off about thousandths of an inch, or it should have taken all that jagged edge right off of there. But what I can do now is I can just cut it off really with a knife or something there and clean it up a little.
So how many pieces did you say was to the ferrule?
Well, the way I make the ferrules, on the female we'd have 3 pieces soldered together. The male would be made up out of 3 pieces. And
Those are your rods that you made here in this rack, aren't you, in this case? Did you make these?
No, some of those are just. Oh.
I mean, you can even maybe explain to us with one
Well,
of
this
your
is some of
rods.
these. Okay, what I've got in here is just some stuff I've collected as antique stuff.
Okay.
After they're glued up, you can see the nodes I was telling you about, the spacing. See, that's a node right there. See how the grain is a little different. And we go there 180 degrees and we find the same on the other side. Now that represents those two panels, you know.
Put together.
Yep. Well, where I took 2 out of 3 different billets, a cane.
Oh, okay.
See, one's there. And the gluing sequence, I lay them in a gluing fixture that when I spread the glue, I've got them arranged so that when I roll them all together, this comes out opposite. See?
Yeah.
Now we follow up the rod, pick up another node somewhere. And, well, there's one. Come out there.
This one down here?
Find no, that's not one. There's one here.
Hmm.
Okay, now we go. There, we pick up another one. There's one there. Look at it on the other side. It's kind of faint there, but it's there.
That's how good these are put together. You can't spot them. So,
Right.
how do you,
Huh?
I gotta get masking tape.
how do you slide these on to the next section?
That'll be cut off flush, you know,
Oh,
when I
this will
get
be
to
for the
use.
ferrule, huh?
Yeah, that'll be the ferrule, right. Right.
Okay.
The metal ferrule's going to go on there. Now that's something I would do with this little setup I have over here on this other lathe. See, this little grinder right here would grind that portion down where the ferrule's going to go on. It's a full precision grinder. It's really a tool post grinder.
Grinds the end of the rod here and the ferrule? Or just the ferrule?
Just the ferrule.
Because you can do this with like a...
Oh yeah, you don't mess with that too much anymore. Just true it up a little bit there, get the uneven ends out. And then put the tip top on that.
Those are all set to go, huh?
Yeah, that'll be cut off. I cut that off really with just my knife, you know, and get it back down to here where they're all even. See, when I make this stick, I make it so that there's about an inch a cut off, so I can true up both ends, you know, make it an inch over what it's got to be, and that'll allow for all that.
Yeah. That's perfect. So then what happens when you do the ferrules on the ends here?
When we put our stick in here now, see, this would be going through here like such. And that would be turning like that. This here would be turning like that. You can see I'd work that up into there. And we're going to cut that ferrule station.
Yeah.
Okay? Until the ferrule just fits on there with a little pressure, and then the glue will take up and make it.
Take care of it right away.
Take care of it. It's on there then. It's a real. Oh, I try to put it within about 1,000ths in the glue I use. There's a rubber base glue, and it has to have a little bit of room, or else you wouldn't have any glue in there. But we like to have a fit about 1,000ths, 1,000.5 maybe. And
is this one of Morris's machines too?
No, he didn't
this
have
is something
that.
he couldn't do, right?
No, he did it a little different way, like with a file and stuff on here, and cut it with a tool bit. So this grinding is just another way of doing it. And of course, I picked that old machine up real cheap, and so instead of swapping this off on there every time, what the heck, you know, I just keep it like this. And plus, I use this for handle shaping too. And like the handles would come normally, it'd look like that. See, a bunch of just corks glue it together. And with this grinder and so forth, well, I can shape them to whatever shape would want to do it. Now I'm just kind of really low on finished rod here. See, everything I got is sold, or most stuff you see around here is repaired. Yeah.
Pretty much the same side of him, pushing.
Yeah.
And he was very much interested in both of you.
Yeah. Well, he was a real for real guy. I mean, there wasn't nothing phony about him. I mean, you know, he could do anything. I always thought he was probably the smartest engineering mind or that type of guy that I ever socialized with, because I don't think there was anything that, you know, if he wanted to do it, he couldn't in a way of building something. He'd just do it. I mean, there was no problem. I don't care what you wanted to build. If he didn't know how, he knew how the hell to find the answers and get it going,
Yeah.
And it amazed me, some of the little tools and stuff he'd make, and the ideas, the principle. He'd look at something, and maybe a few hours later, maybe a couple of days later, he'd come up with a way of doing it better, and he'd make the machine and make everything work. And there were a lot of people around Detroit knew him in that angle. Really, you could find that he had done things for and helped and got him out of messes probably. And
yeah, I never heard about that aspect. I know he was knowledgeable in the fly rod machines, but as far as
well, I really think that a lot came later on in life, after he had really done a lot of other accomplishments in, he had some patents and stuff I don't know too much about, but I remember he showed me a car lock mechanism once, a unit about this big, and he had a whole bunch of patents on that where he had invented the different little angles, and I guess they still use some of them today probably. That's something you could look into. And
yeah, what he did with the two of the dime, sure he must have.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of things in there.
Was he working mainly with one of the auto companies?
No, I think he did prototype work for most anybody. I know he did stuff. He told me about his sewing machine. I don't know which one it was, but I kind of thought he said Singer, but one of those, he did some prototype work where they had a problem, didn't know what to do, and see if he can do something with this, and he'd do it.
And make it work.
Right, make it work.
That's amazing.
So that was, if you look at his letterhead, I believe it said prototype engineering, which, means bring your problems to us.
Yeah, pioneering.
Right, and as long as you know what the man wants done, or wants the end results, and he'd figure out what to do in between.
But the fly rods, that came
later, I think, as after he retired or from the industry.
When did he retire from the two of them?
I'm not sure about that. I'm really not sure. I would say from today it must have been 20 years back. Because, let's see, we've been up here about 10 years. And when I was down there, I must have worked with him probably, 3 or 4 years. Well, and he had already had the bug and was starting in it, And then I came into the picture and gave him a few of the other theories.
Yeah, why don't you tell us again about how you ran into him the first time?
Oh, the first time I ran into him, he came into Paul H. Young Company where I was working, and we built rods there, and he came in and just talked about bamboo rods. And one day I was working on an old rifle, a Springfield rifle I was converting for myself, and I was in the process of polishing out some of the scratches around the receiver area, which is kind of intricate little shapes in there, and I wanted to really get them all out and mirror smooth, and he said, well, geez, why don't you come by my shop? I've got some little tools that'll take care of that real easy for you, So I went over there, and, we became good friends from then on. And
how old was he then?
Oh, God, he was, I don't know exact age, but he was over 60. But he was still a pretty darn spry, cocky little guy, And he got all enthused. He get enthused about anything mechanical. He got all enthused about the work I was doing on that gun, And he showed me a few ways of doing it. And in fact, I still got that gun rig back here now. I just got it. I still work on it a little. I've never really finished it. And so I became good friends. And from there, I think about the next thing we did, we took a trip to Lake Nipigon together and spent a week up on Lake Nipigon, just him and me and the Indian guide. And that was quite a trip. It had a kind of a scary part to it. He was taking these heart pills at the time, see. And we drove from Detroit non-stop to Nakina, Ontario, which, God, it seemed to me it was right around 1,000 miles. And we drove non-stop. And he drove 3/4 of the way, I'll say. And we didn't sleep or nothing. We just drove and kept talking. And he had a big Chrysler Imperial. It was brand new one then. That white ones, And so we ended up there, and still we weren't tired because we had talked from Detroit for the 1,000-mile trip all about rods and building, every kind of thing, from machines and anything you could think of. So we ended up there, and then we had to take a train for 100 miles, it was, I believe, or right around 100 miles, to the top of the lake, and from there we went about 40 miles on a big boat, partway down the lake, and we were left there for a week. Well, we were on that boat and partway down the lake, and he says, "Doggone it," he said, "I forgot something." And I said, "What was that?" "His heart pills." And here I had a whole week I was going to spend with this guy without these pills, which, heck, I don't know. Here I'm, 20-year-old, what the heck was I? 25-year-old kid or something, not knowing how serious is this, And I says, "Well, hey, I'll go back, and because with the guy, and I'll take the train back to they were at the car. Give me the key, and I'll go back there, and it can't take any more than a day, next train comes back, and I'll meet you there to go with the guide." And he almost fought me, fist and tooth, that we weren't going to do this. Well, then he started trying to assure me that, well, I didn't really need them, and this and that. So, I don't know. It was a decision we made, and I didn't go. And I'm really thankful nothing happened there. I probably never would have lived that down if, something would have happened. And so I did take it awful darn easy. I made sure he didn't do anything on that trip, but he had to fight him all the time. He had to make sure he pushed the boat in the water. He had to try and carry the motor. He had to do all these things, and it was a constant fight to keep him calmed down and not be so obvious that you were babying him, because this would really make him mad. And I couldn't talk to the Indian guide about the situation because he could hardly talk, and he wouldn't have understood anyway. And then we had this cocky little guy running around trying to do everything, and I'm trying to not be obvious. I'm just trying to be wherever the heavy work is to make sure I grab it before him. So this went on for a week, and nothing luckily did ever happen. We got back to the car, and we made it back to Detroit. So he lived many years after, so I guess it didn't hurt him.
Yeah, so he was at least sick a little bit for a long time, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, he had those pills then. Which I didn't know about him. I didn't know when we left.
You told us about the kush spoon that happened up there.
Oh, yeah, we had a funny incident happened out in the lake. He made a spoon called the Kush spoon, which,
We got a nice
yeah,
photo of that with one of
yeah.
his sons, two of his sons introducing the kush spoon.
Right. So he made that a long time ago, quite a long time from what I could understand. It was always a hobby that he kept in one corner of the shop, and in between jobs he'd work on the dyes. And he finally got that thing done. And
one of these spoons was one design and different styles.
Oh, different sizes, right. Lately they've come out with some other stuff, but he had nothing to do with that. I think that's a result of the new people that own that. That's been sold, I think, to somebody, hasn't it? Okay. So that's a result of these new people. But the original Kush spoon with the lightning flash had the zigzag on it. That was what it was, one of his prides, and that's what we used to catch these big brook trout, or coasters, as you'd call them when they live in the lake up there. And we did want to fly fish then. We did fly fish quite a bit up there in that lake, but we never caught one on because it was always rougher than hell, and it was in the lake, and it's hard to fly fish in the lake. You just can't do too much. And so anyway, we're out in the darn lake, and we run into these two other guys after being out there a couple days who were camped down shore from us a couple miles.
You've been catching fish.
And we've been catching fish quite regular with this. And these guys, they just seem to be grumpy and madder than hell, And one of the problems was the guide that we had up there turned out to be a little bit on the shady side, and he was screwing them out of a guide they were supposed to get. And two guys were taking turns, one manning the boat while one's casting. Well, they should have had a guide manning the boat, and both of them fishing for, paying what they did a day for the outfit. So they're madder than hell anyway, and they ain't got any fish. We come alongside them, and we had a few fish, and I think we caught one right in front of them, and the guy hollers over, "What the hell are you catching them with, And I think I hollered back, or said, "Well, kush spoons." And the guy hollers back, "Well, what in the hell's a kush spoon?" Right then, Morris, he was kind of setting down low in the boat. It was really windy, and there was a spray flying all the time, and he was kind of bundled up there and setting low in the boat. And then he popped up like a jack in a box, and he hollers back, "How in the hell are you going to catch a fish if you don't even know what a kush spoon is?" Well, right then I thought we were going to have a fight on the water, and pretty soon the boats, we got closer together, and I picked up a few kush spoons, which we had just boxes of them, naturally, and threw them over to him. And the guy immediately puts one on, and it was just like a stroke of luck, or somebody was watching over us, but the first cast, this guy caught the only fish he caught in a couple days, right in front of us. And so we became pretty good friends after that. And it turned out the guys lived near him down there in Birmingham, and think he made their acquaintance later on too. So that was just another interesting little thing that happened there. And
was that a real special lure?
Oh,
it really worked.
Yeah, it worked. It was a lot like the Daredevil, and except it had a zigzag flash embossed on it. It was stamped right in with a die, and apparently had something going for it because it worked. And these guys had been using everything under the sun. They had hundreds of lures with them in boxes, and it was just amazing when he put that lure on and he caught a fish. And which I gotta believe there was some luck in there too. I mean, but somebody was. Fish had to be there at the right time to see it and everything too. And,
but it's funny. I mean, we've gone over, like I said, 5,000 feet.
Yeah.
And damn, I every time I keep saying we should count up these fish. More seems to have caught more fish.
Oh yeah.
Anybody I've ever known.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if it was luck.
Well, there's something else too. You get to where they are, like this place at Lake Nipigon. He had been there 20 years before that, and he talked about getting 50 fish a day or so. And I think the most we ever did, maybe one day we might have got 5. But you know, they're big fish, and it does seem like a lot of action. But he talked about getting 50 of these a day. 20 years previous to when we were there.
Work.
Yeah, it was literally a lot of work. If we would have caught that many that day, we would have been tired. And but the old days are gone because hell, they start netting them out of there and doing everything imaginable in order to sell them to the market. And so that fishing is something that'll probably never be repeated.
Yeah, we got some old pictures of stringers.
Right.
Man, like this
Sure.
6 feet long,
Yeah, like 20 years before. I mean, they went up there in quite old cars and stuff. That was really the old days. There wasn't that many people involved. Today, hell, it's just a matter of money, and there's a lot of people with it. You can go anywhere. So, I thought it was a big bundle of money when him and me went there, but I thought, hell, I might as well do it. I'm getting older every day, and but that was fabulous fishing at that time too. But I guess the best part of it was being able to get down, so far away from anybody and camping out like that. It was a great deal.
It was just you and Morris.
Yeah, and the guide. And the funny part about it, the guide was the same guide he had 20 years before, which he had asked this outfitter if that guy was still around, and he said, yeah, he can dig him up. And of course now the fellow was 20 years older, and I guess he was just a kid, when he went with him the first time, and he seemed to be about 40 years old or so, and we had him, and he remembered him.
The good guy, and the other guys ended up getting nothing.
Yeah, they got very little, and well, they got some more spoons. I don't know how they came about. I think after that one, they came over closer, and we gave them a couple dozen, to last them. Because you did lose a lot of them up there, a lot of rocks, and your lures settle down. You get them on these rocks, and you lose them. So there was quite a few cush spoons, I guess, embedded in those rocks up there. And we had another funny thing there. I don't know how the heck you get into that, but the last day we were supposed to. We had a prearranged schedule that we were to be picked up by the big boat. See, the big boat, like 30, 40-foot cruiser, towed us down in these little boats and left us. Then he was supposed to come back and get us at a certain day. Well, that day comes. Well, remember, he's charging us by the day. It was $70 for it to us per day. And so that day comes, and it had been windier than hell all week. And we got out that morning, and it was the nicest day we ever seen. I mean, it was just beautiful. And the Indian guide, he isn't hurrying up. He isn't doing anything. The guy was going to be here at noon. Well, hell, we had 2 tents to take down, a lot of stuff to pack, and everything else. And right away we wondered, well, why isn't he starting to do something? Well, we were a little funny about the whole thing, since these other 2 fishermen had been screwed out of a guide and everything. We figured something's wrong. And then when this Indian doesn't make any move, and we said, come on, Nehaw, let's get... That was his name, Nehaw. I remember, Nehaw, something like that. Let's get this thing going. We're going to get out of here at noon, because we had to catch the train, like, that afternoon late. Or there was another whole day delayed there, or 2 maybe. See. So, he isn't hurrying or nothing. And we started talking to each other, and then finally we asked him why. He says, bad weather coming, bad weather, we can't go today. So what the hell you mean? And bad weather's the best day we've had, He says, Doug never come with boat today. Bad skies, bad skies. Well, we figured that's some gun setting us up for $70 a day, maybe 2 or 3 days, And so we told him, he says, well, I'll tell you what, we're packing the little boat with a lot of gas, 1 motor. We're going to leave the tents and the food, and we're going. by 1 o'clock, because we figured it'd take that many hours till dark, and we had to calculate, and we'll hit that place, and we'll follow the shoreline for the 40 miles to the outlet of this river, which we had to go up that about another 5 miles to the lodge where this guy lived in the railroad trestle, and then the 100 miles back. And so he starts saying, "Oh, white man, very foolish, never make it," all this kind of stuff. Well, Morris and me said, "Bullshit, we'll make it," And so we got up around 11 o'clock. The Indian's sitting there like he wasn't going to go for a couple days. So we start packing the boat. Come just about 1 o'clock, we start shoving the boat offshore. The Indian, he's coming. He don't want to be left alone. So we said, "Well, we're going now. You're coming with us or you staying?" And we had the boat actually in the water, and that Indian ran and jumped in the boat. And so we started up the shore, and we figured the Indian could know how to go straight across the lake. And this lake's 100 miles long and 60 miles wide, and we had to kind of quarter one end of it. If we went, it would be out of sight of land maybe a little, if we wanted to intercept that river. But then if we missed the river, we could be wrong. But if we followed the shoreline, we'd finally hit it. Well, we were going to follow the shoreline, not being sure, but we were sure the Indian knew how to go straight across. So we put it to him now. He says, "Now you tell us how to go straight across, and we'll make it before dark, or we're going to go this way, and we're going to be in the dark. What do you want to do?" Well, the Indian's really confused now, So we just start going to shoreline. Pretty soon we say, "Go over there, tree, mountain, go that way, So then we go right across the open water, and we saved quite a bit, We finally got to the mouth of that river, and it was just about twilight. And by the time we got up the river to where the lodge was, it was dark. And we could see this guy standing on the dock, I remember, and it was dark, and we come up real slow, and we, boom, bumped the dock, and he about jumped out of his shoes, "Who's that?" And we say, "Well, it's Morris and Bob." "What are you doing here? What are you doing?" He was so surprised. And that whole trip, there wasn't a ripple on the water, there wasn't a bit of wind, there was nothing. So we come up there and know, "What the hell are you doing? Why wouldn't you come down there and get us?" And he started in about a big storm being there, and he couldn't get his boat down that river into the mouth of the river. And he insisted that was the story, that the storm was there where he was and it wasn't where we are. Well, you can see 30, 40 miles across in the sky up there, And it was as clear as could be. There was no storm, no nothing. It was a real setup. So we got up into his house, and we were madder than hell because we missed the train, but we didn't know that maybe we'd have a couple more days. And so it was the next morning. It was just about light, and I heard way off in the distance this train whistle blowing, And boy, I went over and I waked Morris up and says, "Hey, we better get ready. That son of a gun didn't even wake us up. He's going to get us for another day again." And so Morris, he listens, and he hears the damn train. So we were pulling our clothes on, I'm telling you, and that damn train was getting close, and I had to run, I guess. Oh, God, I don't know. It seemed to me it was a couple city blocks to the railroad tracks from the lodge was. So I ran up there, and the train, I could see him. And I hollered. Well, here come Morris. He comes trudging along, dragging some stuff, and he lost a good pair of shoes and a few other things, and I lost a few fishing items. And we just threw every damn thing in a boxcar, and we rode back in the engine with the engineer. And all the way back to the little town in Nikina where we had our car. So we had quite an experience there, and we found out that was a normal procedure with that character up there. And he gets you, a couple guys, $70 a day. He'd keep you for a couple days more. That was big money to him.
Yeah. You figured a nice day, you guys wouldn't mind even staying.
Yeah, they probably did. That's about what he was thinking. But we had some commitments back in truck. We had to be there, see. And we had told people we would and everything. And we had to really tie him down pretty good, and there was no reason for it. And it was just one of those little things, he wasn't going to, Morris wasn't going to hold still. There was any way, boy, we were going. And when we got out of the boat, the Indian, he just got off and walked away with his head down because he knew he was kind of guilty a part of the whole plot. And it was really crazy. Yeah, and even though, the Indian worked for the outfitter, and he was real good friends with us while we were there, but he was still, I guess, loyal to the outfitter. So that was just another little experience we had up there. So, I don't know, you guys got pictures of that, though, I'm sure. That had to be the ones that I was in, because it's the only time I went fishing with them, really.
You never went fishing with them after that?
I don't think so. It seemed we talked about going out around Detroit somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't think... Okay, right, we did. We went up by Holly a couple times.
Do you remember the name of the people that owned that?
Oh, God, what was their names?
He took me there a couple
Yeah.
times. Caught more
Big
fish.
bluegills and bass, right.
Yeah.
Guy made furniture or something, I think.
I'll never remember.
God, well, that's where I did go fishing with him. I went there a couple times. Yeah. It was around Holly.
Yeah. It was just past.
I can't remember that name, though. What the... Huh. No, I can remember going up there. Okay, that's where I went fishing with him. There and Lake Nipigon. Most of the other times we had anything to do, we would just be at his house discussing rods and different things like that, and went to his shop a few times and things like that.
Were you ever at the shop in Farmington?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I went over there when I was negotiating for all his stuff and deal with Seymour. And whatever happened to that place now?
I think
That one partner of
Sloan
Seymour's?
probably still running it.
Yeah.
Yeah, George Sloan.
Yeah, right.
I don't think the Cush spoon is still being punched out.
No? You think it's died altogether, or did they sell the whole thing to somebody?
That might have happened.
Lure Corporation they formed, I think, for that. Just for that. Then they made downriggers and a few other things, you know.
Really?
Oh yeah, they got a downrigger, you know, like they use for the coho, the big wheel you crank and all that stuff.
They crank that out.
Yeah. But it was called Lure Corporation. And it made the Cush spoon and that. Now whether that was sold to somebody else and they did all that, or I don't know. Yeah. I remember one time we talked and I could have had that lure